Hello everyone, this is Sam Gabriel. In today's video I want to talk about Vault, especially Vault Enterprise. I want to talk about high availability, replication, disaster recovery, and so on. There's a little bit of confusion as to what replication versus HA or high availability looks like, so I'll try to clear up a few things in this video. So let's dive right in. Okay, so let's have this whiteboard here and let's draw what this all looks like. So here's a Vault node, another Vault node, and a third one. And these are going to be part of a cluster. So I'm just going to use the green pen here to signify what a cluster is made up of. This Vault cluster, you typically will have this running in 3 availability zones. So if I have AZ1, AZ2, and AZ3, so 3 availability zones that have their separate cooling, separate power, and so on. So this could be in your cloud or even if in your data center. If you want to run Vault in your data center in high availability mode, make sure you put these 3 nodes in different availability zones, as you can see. Now, for Vault Enterprise, the 2 supported backend storage that we have as of this time of the recording with Vault 1.4, and we're in July 2020. So at this point in time, we have two ways or 2 backends. You got console. If you use console for high availability for your backend, that's supported by our support team. And the second one is if you use what we call integrated storage. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So integrated storage, and this utilizes the raft protocol. So this uses raft to communicate who's the leader and who's the follower and so on. So if I can signify here A for active and S for standby. So you have typically 1 active node in the cluster and 1 standby node. So this is a raft cluster made up of 3 Vault nodes, and each one is in its own availability zone. So at this point, this is all covered by OSS, so our open source. So having 3 nodes or 5 nodes in a high availability configuration, as you can see here, in different availability zones, this is all covered by our open source version of Vault. Now, if you need to have disaster recovery and performance replication and so on, that's where the enterprise portion comes into play. Let's take a look at what that looks like. In this case, I'll have just in this demo, because we're going to show a demo later, to make things simpler for myself, I just created a 1 node cluster for the performance replication and disaster recovery. So we'll show you what this looks like. And here is 1 cluster. Again, anything in a green box is considered a cluster. Okay. This is US West region, and this region is US East. Okay. And here I've got my performance replication cluster. Here I have a disaster recovery, another disaster recovery cluster, and a third disaster recovery. And this disaster recovery is for my primary cluster here, and it's in the same region. So if we just separate this like that, so we have 2 regions, US West, US East, and there's performance replication happening here. This one has its own disaster recovery, and the primary also has another disaster recovery cluster outside its region. So it has 1 in US West and it has 1 in US East. You can have any number of disaster recovery clusters if you wish. So if you have multiple other regions, you can separate them across regions if you wish. Now, the performance replication and disaster recovery are covered under two different modules inside of Enterprise. So if I were to go quickly and show you the offerings that we have with HashiCorp Enterprise, Vault Enterprise, you can see the open sources in this column, Enterprise Platform is here, and then the different modules in the third column. Let's scroll down to talk about disaster recovery. So the entry level is Enterprise Platform for Vault Enterprise. It has disaster recovery and it has namespaces. The replication piece comes here under Multi-datacentre and Scale module, and that gives you that PR that we'll talk about in just a little bit. Okay, so this is under the Multi-datacentre module, and the DR is under the base Enterprise Platform module, or Enterprise Platform for Vault. All right, so what are we going to do here? In the demo, what I'll do is I'm going to start to kill some of the nodes that I have here. And I actually should mention this is Enterprise. Okay, so OSS is just a cluster of high available nodes, and Enterprise has the option of performance replication, disaster recovery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the active node in my HA cluster, and you'll see that we'll have a new active node, and then I'm going to kill that one as well, basically rendering this cluster useless. It will be completely down, and at this point I'll show you how the performance replication, which is really an active scenario. So this is active, active. So if you have a requirement that your vault needs to be available at all times, you probably want to take the multi-datacentre module to make sure that you are in active mode. And if that's not a concern, then you can use the disaster recovery where it's a cold standby. So at that point, you'll see in the demo how we're going to use that. So at the first part of the demo, I'm going to bring that cluster down. I'll show you how the performance replication is still up. You can still see your secrets and all the data that you need. Then what I'll do is I'm going to kill the performance replication cluster, and then I'll show you how your disaster recovery still has all the data there. All you need to do is promote it from a cold standby secondary to your primary, and you got all your data back. This is a manual process, and that's why it's going to take a little bit of time, not a whole lot of time, to bring it up. That's why it's a cold standby. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the demo. All right, so for this, I have 7 nodes, just like the ones I showed in the drawing. I've got 3 nodes in US West, A, B, and C in 3 zones, 3 availability zones. This lives in GCP. And then I've got my performance replication right here that lives in US East, as we showed in the drawing as well. Then I got a disaster recovery for that performance replication node. And then I got the 2 disaster recoveries, one in East, one in West for the primary cluster. So these are all the 7 nodes that I have. I have 7 tabs up here showing that. If you jump into any one of those, these are the 3 members of the HA cluster, and you can access any one of them. It doesn't matter. Even if it's not the active node, the data gets forwarded, or the connection gets forwarded over to the active node from the follower node. So what do we have here? We've got some authentication methods that you can see: Kubernetes, user pass. I have a bunch of secrets in here. I also have some namespaces, which is an enterprise feature. And you can see NS1, NS2. And if you go into NS1, you can see an admin's secrets engine. There's a secret that lives here. Let's just reveal what it looks like. NS1 admins. You can further segregate your vault into nested namespaces. So if you want to isolate further, you can do that. I don't have any secrets in sub NS1, but you get the picture. You can go here and you can manage the namespaces under NS1. or you can go all the way back to the root namespace and you can manage the namespaces here. So this is really handy if you want to have mini vaults or micro vaults within your main vault, and you would have authentication methods for each one of those namespaces. So if you were going to break it down by department or line of business, then each line of business will have their own mini vault, if you will. All right, so that kind of covers namespaces, and we've seen the different secrets that we have here. This one here is our PR. This is our performance replica, and as you can see, it's active, so it's active. We have all our namespaces in place. We've got all our secrets in place. If we want to dig into that same admin secret, we can see it's right here. It has the same credentials. So that's great. Now what are we going to do? We're going to go in to, let's see, my terminal window. And I've broken this into the 7 nodes that we have here. The top 3 are the ones from the HA cluster. So you can see my primary US West 1A, B, C, and then this one down here is the PR one, and then the DR for the PR, and here are the 2 DRs for my primary cluster. All right, so let's clear out of here, and let's run, actually, let's just run vault status to show you what the status looks like. Here you can see that HA is enabled. You have the address of the active node. You can also, with raft, run this command, vault operator raft list peers. And you can see the leader is my B node, and A and C are followers. So this one is the leader. Okay, well, let's kill the leader and see what happens. Stop vault. Okay, let's see vault status. Okay, that one's dead. Let's run the peer command again. And you can see that A now becomes the leader. Okay, so A is the leader. Now at this point, B is out of the cluster. It's not up anymore. So I can kill A or kill C, either one. That will bring down my cluster. Although this one is the follower, C is a follower. Even if you bring down the follower, the whole cluster comes down. So let's actually go ahead and bring down C and see how that works. So sudo system stop vault. What did I do here? Okay. Now let's just check vault status. All right, this one's down. Let's check the peers here again. And there you go. No raft cluster configuration found. So the raft cluster is now hosed. You're out of luck. Well, let's double check and look at our UI. If I refresh this, this one is A, and this is a standby vault node, and you can't really communicate with it anymore. That's the only node that's left up and running in the cluster. This is B is down and C is down. So even though A is still up, it's in standby mode. You can't really access it. You can't get the secrets. You can't do anything. Now let's check on our PR node. Let's refresh this. And actually, I have to sign in again since I refreshed it. So let's go ahead and find the token. Let's log in. Okay, so everything's fine. I can still see my secret. It's still available. I can go back to my root namespace. I can see everything is in there and nothing has changed. And it's completely active. This is active state. So that's great. So we're at this point where if we go back to our drawing here, this cluster is now completely down, and PR is still up. So we're going to kill PR right now and see what happens. Okay. Let's go back here. Let's go in here and say vault, or actually sudo system. Before we do that, I want to show you one more thing. If we go over to here. If we go into PR, from the UI itself, if you click at the top, you can see that this one is a disaster recovery primary, and it's also a performance secondary, meaning that it's a secondary device for the performance replication. And it also is considered a disaster recovery primary for this guy over here. So it has a disaster recovery that's secondary. So this is secondary, and this is a disaster recovery primary. Okay, and it's also a performance replication secondary, because it's a secondary to this guy who is both a performance replication primary and the disaster recovery primary as well. Okay, so it's a disaster recovery primary because it has two secondaries. This is a DR secondary. This one is also a DR secondary. Okay, so this is DR primary and PR primary. This is DR secondary, another DR secondary, and this is a PR secondary and the DR primary. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. And you can see it again if you click on the status in the UI in any of the nodes, you'll see what the status of that particular node is. So it's a disaster recovery primary and a performance secondary. All right, now let's go ahead and finally kill this node. So sudo systemctl stop vault. And I can't spell today. System. Okay. Now this is down. Let's check the status. Yes, it's down. Let's go over here, refresh. The node is down. Okay. And let's go over here. This is my DRPR US East 1D. So it's the DR for my PR. And it's right here. You can see that it's in DR mode. And the other two are also in DR mode. So all you can do with the DR cluster is pretty much nothing. You'll have to promote it. So going back here, this guy I have to promote to be able to use it. And the way that works is, let's do this. Actually, for here, I want to bring one of those back up. Actually, I don't need to. I can go here and recover. Now I want to recover this node. So generate an operation token. Gives you a one-time password. Copy that. And let's store it somewhere here. See, I've done this before, so let me just delete those so I don't confuse myself. This is my one-time password. Then I need to put the master key portion. So let's take the master key. Let's put it in here. You're given a command. Basically, you have an encoded operation token. You need this command to get the actual token to promote this guy. So let's copy this once again. Let's put it in here just in case I lose it. And let's go in here and paste that. Yeah, let's bring one of these guys up first. See, I can't run this command on the disaster recovery node itself. I need to run it on an active node. That's why I'm bringing those back up, just to be able to run this command. And it's probably not going to work because my vault is sealed. Whenever you restart a vault or bring it down, bring it back up, it comes back up in a sealed state. So if I were to run the command raft list peers, you can see I'm still, my cluster's still down. So let's go back and unseal. Let's go back here and unseal my node. I'm sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay, this node is going to come back up. I could do that here as well. I can try to bring in the whole cluster up. And then, of course, I have to unseal that node as well. Now, if I run this command, we'll see who is the active node. The leader is now A. Okay. Now let's go ahead and use that command that we saw earlier to, where is it? This one. Okay, perfect. Now I have my token. I can use this token to promote my cluster. So let's go back in here. And all this, I'm doing this through the UI because it shows a little bit better when presenting a demo. But you can do any of these through the API or through the CLI. All right, so we're back in business. You can see my disaster recovery node is back up. It has everything. It's got its namespaces. I can double check that same set of credentials. So everything was replicated beautifully, and we're back up and running. And at this point, we have a couple of options. So if we go back to the drawing, I did bring this guy back up as a cluster. I didn't have to. This guy is still down, right? So this guy is still down. This guy is up, and he's the primary. I could do two things. I can demote this guy. So that's my first option. And if I demote this guy, I'm basically bringing him back to be the DR secondary to my PR. The other option I have is to basically totally disable my old primary. I can go ahead and disable my DR primary, old DR primary. Okay, so that I can go ahead and disable this guy altogether, and then maybe add him again as a secondary to my DR here. So it's really up to you how you'd like to do that. But basically, in this demo, you're able to see how we can architect a highly available Vault cluster across regions. So starting with the OSS itself, where we talked about having the active or HA cluster for raft. This can also work for console as a backend. And this is all OSS if you're running in one region only, and you don't care about disaster recovery, so you're good to go with OSS. If you need disaster recovery and only disaster recovery, you've seen that it's a cold standby. It's a bit of a manual process to promote that cluster and get back your data. That DR could live in the same region, or you can put it in a different region. And finally, the concept of performance replication and how you can move your data or replicate your data across a region. And this is an active mode where now you can make sure that your data is still there in place, nothing has changed, your vault is up and running 24/7, and you're good to go. And you also have a disaster recovery for that PR as well. Now, one thing to note, I didn't show in the demo, is that when these two are up, the primary and the secondary PR or performance replication, you can write into either one of those. You can write secrets into them. It's a given, of course, you can read from each one of them, and that's why it's called performance. So if you have an application here that needs to get secrets, it can directly get it from within its own region, because this sits in US East. It doesn't have to go all the way across the US West region to get the secret. It can directly get it from its local region. So that's from a read perspective. From a write perspective, you can write to your local region. However, if this guy is down, the primary, you cannot write to the PR. You have to make sure you bring up the first one, the primary, and then you can start writing again. There's a reason for that, so we don't have a mismatch since this guy is down, right? So you can read from it when it's down, no problem, but you can't write to the PR at this point. Excellent. Okay, so hopefully this is hopefully this has been helpful to give you an idea of performance replication and how this all works at an enterprise level, and when you need HA and when you need DR and when you need PR. Thank you for watching.